Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Good morning, everybody. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottama Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nastya Preyeshvarabreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yuttamo Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. And the English together, please. Reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, and Maya Narayan Rishi, supermost human being, and unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Hare Krishna. So this morning, these weather changes kind of turned me around a little bit. So I ask for your blessing that I might say something nice this morning and that everybody will benefit and it'll be pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. So we are in chapter 10, verses 15 to 36. So there's quite a lot. And we're going to focus this morning on text 20. So let's go ahead. We can go around the room like we usually do and read the verses, and then we'll come back and we'll chant text 20 and read the verse in purport.
While the Lord was departing from the palace of Hastinapur, different types of drums, like the mridanga, dhola, nagra, danduri, and dandubi, and flutes of different types, the veena, gomukha, and bheri, all sounded together to show him honor.
Out of a loving desire to see the Lord, the royal ladies of the Kurus got up on top of the palace and, smiling with affection and shyness, they showered flowers upon the Lord.
At that time, Arjuna, the great warrior and conqueror of sleep, who is the intimate friend of the most beloved Supreme Lord, took up an umbrella which had a handle of jewels and was embroidered with lace and pearls.
Okay, so this is the scene. Let's talk about the scene a little bit. So, Battle of Kurukshetra has ended, and Krishna, by the urging of all the Pandavas and especially King Yudhisthira, has spent some extra time in Hastinapur. All of the devotees and the Pandavas and the household of the palace, they're all anticipating Krishna's departure, and he's leaving now. He's going back to Dwaraka, and there is this huge, like a parade that's being put together for him. I don't think we've heard about it yet, but there's all kinds of brahmanas and sages that are chanting Vedic hymns, and of course you can imagine like trumpets and horses and elephants and soldiers and this huge entourage that's going to see Lord Krishna off as he goes back to Dwaraka with great pomp and circumstance. And so that's kind of the scene. And as we just learned, the ladies of the palace, so in that day, there wasn't, in that day and in that culture, there wasn't free mixing between men and women. So the women of the palace have gotten up on the roofs in order to see Krishna off. So that's kind of the scene. Let's go ahead.
Uddhava and Satyaki began to fan the Lord with decorated fans, and the Lord, as the master of Madhu, seated on scattered flowers, commanded them along the road.
It was being heard here and there that the benedictions being paid to Krishna were neither benefiting nor neither befitting nor unbefitting, because they were all for the Absolute, who is now playing the part of a human being.
Okay, so what do you all think is meant by this, that they were neither befitting nor unbefitting? Yes, Gopi.
I'm just taking a wild guess, but maybe unbefitting because what can you offer the Absolute? The Absolute already has everything to the umpteenth degree. But at the same time, befitting because it's an expression of devotional service.
Yes. So we're talking about, these are the formal benedictions that are being given by the sages and the brahmanas, and they're chanting all kinds of appropriate hymns. And it says here that they were all for the Absolute. And so they're befitting, he is the absolute truth, but he's come in the form of a human being. And unbefitting for another reason. So what else do you think what makes these hymns for the Absolute unbefitting? Think of Lord Krishna and his mood towards his devotees. Okay, your suspense is fantastic. Let's carry on, and we're going to find out about it when we get to text 20. And here we are.
Absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, whose song and select poetry, the ladies on the roofs of all the houses of Hastinapur began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas.
Okay, so of course, chanting appropriate hymns and Vedic mantras to the Supreme Lord, praising him as the absolute truth and as the supreme controller, cause of all causes, the creator of all that is, and so forth and so on, whose attributes are so infinitely numerous that Shesha at the bottom of the universe has been singing his praises for eons upon eons, and he hasn't been able to come to the end of it. So, but here you've got the ladies on the rooftops, kind of, you can almost see them there. They've got their fans over their faces and they're laughing and talking about Krishna and how attractive he is. And how he's going back to Dwarka and how the gopis miss him, so forth and so on, this kind of talk. They're actually speaking of his glories, but his glories in a different way. And it says that this talk was more attractive. Attractive to whom? To Krishna. Okay, let's carry on, and we'll come back to that and we'll talk more about it.
They said, "Here he is, the original personality of Godhead as we definitely remember him. He alone existed before the manifested creation of the modes of nature, and in him only, because he is the Supreme Lord, all living beings merge, as if sleeping at night, their energy suspended."
The personality of Godhead, again desiring to give names and forms to his parts and parcels, the living entities, placed them under the guidance of material nature. By his own potency, material nature is empowered to recreate.
Here is the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose transcendental form is experienced by the great devotees who are completely cleansed of material consciousness by dint of rigid devotional service and full control of life and the senses. And that is the only way to purify existence.
Well, dear friends, here is that very personality of Godhead whose attractive and confidential pastimes are described in the confidential parts of Vedic literature by his great devotees. It is he only who creates, maintains, and annihilates the material world and yet remains unaffected.
So here they've kind of mentioned some of his grand attributes, but now they begin to talk about his form and his confidential pastimes. So we're kind of getting a summary here, but you can imagine that they're saying all kinds of things about his pastimes, and it's being summarized in these verses. Let's go ahead and finish through 36.
Whenever there are kings and administrators living like animals in the lowest modes of existence, the Lord in his transcendental form manifests his supreme power, the truth positive, shows special mercy to the faithful, performs wonderful activities, and manifests various transcendental forms as is necessary in different periods and ages.
Truth positive. I never heard it said like that.
That's a good question. The truth positive. The truth positiveness. What do you think that is?
Good truth maybe? You know, Christians say God is good.
Yeah, speaking of his positive attributes, but I mean, all of his attributes are positive. So I'm not sure. I didn't really look into that much. Does anybody have any ideas about what is meant by truth positive?
Absolute.
Absolute? That he is absolutely the truth. No. Yeah.
Absolute in the sense that there's nothing negative
Nothing negative about him. Yeah.
in this regard.
Yeah. So maybe, go ahead.
Yes, truth positive, so that there's nothing of duality when it comes to absolute.
Yes.
Positive kind of implies duality. The positive kind of, it seems like it implies duality.
If you could use the mic so everybody can.
Hi, Krishna. Saying the positive, it kind of seems that it implies duality.
Well, that's why the truth is attached.
Yeah. So he's the absolute truth. What's that?
I didn't mean to make the whole tangent.
No, that's okay. It's a good question. So, yeah, let's come back to that because I'm not sure exactly what to say. My mind is going in another direction. Let's go ahead and carry on.
Oh, how supremely glorified is the dynasty of King Yadu, and how virtuous is the land of Mathura, where the supreme leader of all living beings, the husband of the goddess of fortune, has taken his birth and wandered in his childhood.
Undoubtedly, it is wonderful that Dvaraka has defeated the glories of the heavenly planets and has enhanced the celebrity of the earth. The inhabitants of Dvaraka are always seeing the soul of all living beings, Krishna, in his loving feature. He glances at them and favors them with sweet smiles.
Oh, friends, just think of his wives, whose hands he has accepted. How they must have undergone vows, fasts, fire sacrifices, and perfect worship of the Lord of the universe to constantly relish now the nectar from his lips by kissing. The damsels of
Vrajbhumi.
would often faint just by expecting such favors.
The children of these ladies are Pradyumna, Samba, Amba, etc. Ladies like Rukmini, Satyabhama, and Jambavati were forcibly taken away by him from the Swayamvar ceremonies after he defeated many powerful kings, headed by Shishupala. And other ladies were also forcibly taken away by him after he killed Bhaumasura and thousands of his assistants. All of these ladies are glorious.
So you can see here, I mean, they're contrasting the fact that, okay, here's the absolute, but here are these things about him that he's so confidential and has all of these personal relationships with his wives in Dwaraka. And speaking here of him going and stealing wives away from Siam, the Swayamvara ceremonies, like he did with Rukmini. Can anybody tell us about that pastime with Rukmini? Anyone? Go ahead, Gayatri.
Rukmini was supposed to get married to the demon king Shishupal, and during her Swayamvara ceremony, which is the ceremony where a girl is announced to be eligible to marriage, and then it's a ceremony for Kshatriya princes and kings to come and like win different challenges to win her hand. And she was engaged to Shishupal, and she did not want to marry him. And even though she had Krishna didn't know Rukmini before this, but she wrote an 8-stanza letter to him, and he was so pleased with her that they had a Rakshasa Vivaham. He came and stole her away and got married in that way.
Jai, so he's received a letter from Rukmini, and it was so pleasing to him that he went in his chariot and kind of swooped her up and rescued her. She did not want to marry Shishupal, who is actually hated Lord Krishna. Yes.
What was appealing about her letter?
Her love and her desire. Yeah, I mean, that's the essence of it, is that the Lord is most attracted by the intimacy of desire and attraction of the living entities for him. Of course, she's, an expansion of the goddess of fortune. But it was her intense desire to have him as her husband. And we can see by looking at, he had 16,108 queens in Dwarka, and 16,000 of them came when he went, and Bhamasura was a demon who had gone out and conquered a bunch of different kings. And every time he conquered a king, he would steal all of the women of the palace for himself and keep them as his concubines. And so the Lord goes and he kills Bhamasura. And it is said that he sets these 16,000 princesses, he sets them free, but nobody would want them because now they've been, kind of defiled by this demon. So they beg Krishna to please marry them. And he marries all of them because they desired so much to be married to him. And in Dwarka, he sets up 16,000 palaces for each of them. And he expands himself 16,000 times and acts like a henpecked husband for every single one of them. And they all think that, okay, I'm his favorite, and he's so in love with me that, I can give him a honey-do list every day, and he'll, yes, dear, yes, dear. But at the same time, he's completely detached from them. And so these are the things that are most pleasing to him, is these loving relationships. And so it was her love. It was Rukmini's love for him and her desire for him that attracted him. So let's go ahead and read on.
All these women auspiciously glorified their lives, despite their being without individuality and without purity. Their husband, the lotus-eyed personality of Godhead, never left them alone at home. He always pleased their hearts by making valuable presentations.
While the ladies of the capital Hastinapur were greeting him and talking in this way, the Lord, smiling, accepted their good greetings, and casting the grace of his glance over them, he departed from the city.
Maharaj Yudhishthir, although no one's enemy, engaged 4 divisions of defense, horse, elephant, chariot, and army, to accompany Lord Krishna, the enemy of the Asuras, demons. The Maharaj did this because of the enemy, and also out of affection for the Lord.
Out of profound affection for Lord Krishna, the Pandavas, who were of the Kuru dynasty, accompanied him a considerable distance to see him off. They were overwhelmed with the thought of future separation. The Lord, however, persuaded them to return home, and he proceeded towards Dwarka with his dear companions.
O Shanaka, the Lord then proceeded towards Kuru Jangala, Panchala, Surasena, the land on the bank of the river Yamuna, Brahmavarta, Kurukshetra, Matsya, Sarasvata, the province of the desert, and the land of scanty water. After crossing these provinces, he gradually reached the Soriva and Abira provinces, then west of these reached Dwarka at last. On his journey through these provinces, he was welcomed, worshipped, and given various presentations. In the evening, in all places, the Lord suspended his journey to perform evening rites. This was regularly observed after sunset.
Okay. So here is this scene where you've got all this formal pomp and circumstance and sages that are chanting all of these flowery hymns of the Vedas to him as the absolute truth. But it brings out, it doesn't emphasize any of that. The thing that it emphasizes are these women of the Hastinapur, of the palace, on the rooftops, just sort of up there talking about all of his personal relationships. And it says that this was more pleasing to him. There's a verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's actually a series of verses in the Adi Lila chapter 4, where this truth is actually emphasized there, where the Lord talks about his mother and how attracted to his mother he is, because she doesn't know that he's the absolute. I mean, she kind of knows, but there's a principle that Yoga Maya, who's the positive counterpart, actually Mahamaya is the negative counterpart to Yoga Maya. And Yoga Maya is the principle of, she is the Lord's internal potency that causes the Lord and all of his devotees in the spiritual world to forget that he's the absolute. And she's basically inspires these loving relationships. So in the spiritual world, for instance, the gopis, the gopas, the cowherd boys, all of the villagers in Vrajabhumi, they don't really think of the Lord as the absolute truth. They don't think of him in terms of all of his exalted glories. All they know is Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj. And in those verses in the CC, it says that it's quoting Krishna, and Krishna says that when my consort or when my beloved chastises me in a sulky mood, this steals my heart from all the flowery words of the Vedas. And when my cowherd friends, when they jump on my shoulders and say, "What kind of a big man are you? You and I are equal." Or when his mother sits him down, drags him in from his play and sits him down and says, "Eat this, you need to eat or you'll die. Eat nicely." And she forces him to eat his lunch because she's so worried that he's not getting enough nourishment. So this is how the Lord is. This is the highest principle. But we can't just jump there. We can't just jump there. This would be called the principle of sahaja. And the sahaja deep. And the principle is you look at the Bhagavad or the Srimad Bhagavatam, you've got 9 cantos with a huge amount of information. And this is what Prabhupada calls the categories. And he talks about how we can't just jump to the 10th canto to the Lord's intimate pastimes. We have to go and we have to learn all of the categories. And they're categories about how the Lord creates, how he expands himself, how he's the supreme Lord and the cause of all causes, and so forth. And so this is a goal that we can aspire to. You were going to say something, Premamrita, please.
Just on that topic of like Krishna relishing these relationships, I was hearing a pastime that I heard already when I was in Vrindavan at a retreat, and Mother Jagatarini describes it even when Jatila, who is a big like bar in Krishna's relationship with Radharani, she's always stopping them from meeting and chastising Krishna with very nasty words, and he retaliates with equally, to a materialistic point of view, very like hurtful insults. But he says, these words, these insults that are shared between me and Jatila, they bring me more pleasure than the prayers of the sages in the Himalayas. But at the same time, like you're saying, we can't imitate that, because she is actually a pure devotee of the Lord and she's only acting for his pleasure. Whereas in this material world, if somebody says mean things about Krishna, it's not for that reason at all.
Yeah. So this is the highest truth, these intimate relationships, and the Lord, it's very pleasing to him. There's another story from the eclipse that happens in Kurukshetra, where all of the devotees and personalities come from Dwarka and Hastinapur and the different places from Vrindavan, and they all come to Kurukshetra in order to offer sacrifice during the eclipse. And this is the first reunion that the Lord has with Vasudeva and Devaki. And Vasudeva and Devaki, what's that? Yeah, since he's been in Dwarka, he hasn't seen them in a very long time. Yeah. So, but the point is that all they can think of is that this is the Supreme Lord. When he's born, he actually reveals himself in his four-armed form in all his glory as Vishnu, and then he takes an infant form, and then Vasudeva takes him to Vrindavan to protect him from Kamsa. And all the Lord wanted in that scene was for his parents to put him on their lap and to smell his hair and to kiss on him. And but they couldn't seem to go there. They couldn't seem to go there. But it says that the Lord was constantly longing for this, that he wished that they would just forget that he was the Supreme Lord and treat him like their beloved son. And anyway, so let's go and look at verse 20 and read the purport. You'll have to forgive me this morning. I'm not feeling so well. And so I'm struggling to speak nicely like I usually do. But let's go ahead and chant verse 20. Anyanyam asit sanjalpa uttama shloka chetasam karavendra purostrinam manoharaha. Anyanyam asit sanjalpa uttama shloka chetasam karavendra purostrinam sarvashruti manoharaha. Please chant. Anyanyamasit sanjalpam uttama shloka chetasam Koravendra Purustrinam Sarvashruti Manoharaha. Anyanyamasit sanjalpa uttama shloka chetasam Koravendras Purastrinam Sarvashruti Manoharaha. Anyanyam asit sanjalpa uttama shloka chetasam Koravendra Purastrinam Sarvashruti Manoharaha. So together let's do the synonyms. Yam, among each other. Asit, there was. Sanjalpa, talking. Uttama shloka, the supreme who is praised by selected poetry. Chetasam, of those whose hearts are absorbed in that way. Kaurava, Indra, the king of the Kurus. Capital, Strinam, all the ladies. Sarva, all. Shruti, the Vedas. Manahara, attracted to the mind. Translation. Absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is sung in selected poetry, the ladies on the roof of all the houses in Hastinapur began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. Would someone read the purport, nice and slow and loud? Please. Thank you.
In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that in all the Vedic literatures, the goal is the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. Factually, the glories of the Lord are depicted in such literature as the Vedas, Ramayana, and Mahabharata. And in the Bhagavatam, they are specifically mentioned in respect to the Supreme Lord. Therefore, while the ladies on the tops of the houses in the capital of the kings of the Kuru dynasty, were talking about the Lord, their talk was more pleasing than the Vedic hymns. Anything sung in praise of the Lord is Shruti mantra. There are songs of Thakur Narottam Das, one of the acharyas in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, composed in simple Bengali language. But Thakur Vishwanath Chakravarti, another very learned acharya of the same Sampradaya, has approved the songs by Thakur Narottam Das to be as good as Vedic mantras. And this is so because of the subject matter. The language is immaterial, but the subject matter is important. The ladies who were all absorbed in the thought and actions of the Lord developed the consciousness of Vedic wisdom by the grace of the Lord. And therefore, although such ladies might not have been very learned scholars in Sanskrit or otherwise, still whatever they spoke was more attractive than the Vedic hymns. The Vedic hymns in the Upanishads are sometimes indirectly directed to the Supreme Lord, but the talks of the ladies were directly spoken of the Lord, and thus they were more pleasing to the heart. The ladies' talks appeared to be more valuable than the learned Brahmana's benedictions.
So each of us has a unique relationship with the Supreme Lord. And you've always had that relationship. It's what you were created to be. I like to say that you remain as you were made by the Supreme Lord. Not made, we always are. So there's never a point in time when we were actually created, but in the sense that we're parts and parcels of the Lord, and He is, in a sense, our creator, as it were. But each of us have a unique relationship with Him. So much so that nobody can replace the relationship that you have with the Supreme Lord. You're that unique. He loves variety. He loves variety, and so he's made parts and parcels of Himself in an infinite number so that He can have a direct relationship with each and every one of us. Now, there are gopis, and there are cowherd boys, and there are, the people in the village in Vrindavan. So you can have a relationship with the Lord that's similar to the others. But it's like you may have a whole bunch of different friends, but would you replace one of your friends for another and say, well, I have this friend over here, I don't need your friendship? No, not really. Because that person is unique, and there are certain things that you like about that person that the other person can't fulfill. And so it's very personal. So it's the same way with the Lord and us. The issue is that when we came to the material world, we decided that we wanted to be like Krishna. We wanted to give up that unique relationship with Him and try to experience being the owner, controller, and enjoyer ourselves. So it's impossible for us to just be that original form. We're completely covered over, because in order for the Lord to give us this experience of being the owner, controller, and enjoyer, because we're not that, we are this other original person to the Supreme Lord. In order to give us that experience, He had to make a place that is completely illusory, like a mirage. And so we're covered over with this mirage in order to give us the experience that we wanted. He loves us that much that he's willing to let us go and to give us the experience that we were looking for. And we usually come to the devotional service of the Lord because something within us has come to the place where we realize that we can never be that. We can never be like him. So the material world is meant to teach us that. It's not only to give us the experience that we wanted, but also life by life, moment by moment, we come to understand that nothing here can satisfy us. That the only thing that can satisfy us is to return to our relationship with the Supreme. But we can't just hop there. We have to go through the categories. We have to walk through cantos 1 through 9, not just in terms of reading it, but we have to go through having realization about who he is and what is our relationship to him. What is the material world? What is the spiritual world? All of these things have to be brought back to our realization. We have to be cleansed as a result of this covering so that we can return to that original relationship. So I guess the point that I'm bringing forward is we can't just treat the Lord like this on a whim. That's what we call prakrita sahaja, or in other words, it's taking the Lord and our relationship to him like a cheap material thing. So the way to this, Prabhupada says that everyone should seek to purchase a ticket back to Godhead. Ticket is the intense desire to have it. And so what we're doing here is trying to awaken that desire to return to the Supreme Lord. And that's the thing that's most pleasing to him. But the interesting thing is, too, is not only was their talk more pleasing to the Lord, them talking about his personal pastimes, but it was more pleasing to them. And I'm going to open it up for you. We're almost out of time. Go ahead. Yes, Premamrita.
Thank you so much for this wonderful explanation. I'm just wondering, my mind went in two directions. One is, okay, so we have to have proper realization about the Lord before we try to approach his more intimate pastimes. But being that the Lord is infinite, how can we ever feel like we have proper realization of any aspect of him? And how do we not get so distracted in the, I need to fully understand Krishna's Brahman feature before I can go into his pastimes, because we won't. So, but then you said, okay, so we just have to have, the desire needs to be awakened in our heart. Mm-hmm. But also on the other end of that spectrum, I've heard of people who have the desire to hear about these very intimate pastimes, and the desire is so strong, and then they hear that point, you just need to have the desire, and so they think that that's enough for them to start reading these maybe very esoteric books that they're not qualified, they don't have the blessings to read yet, but because they have the desire, they think that it's that's their ticket. So how do we find the balance between not getting too discouraged that we never approach the Lord's pastimes, but also not thinking that, oh, my desire is strong enough, I can just go in?
By guidance. Yeah, by guidance. So when the student is ready, a teacher will show up. And the way back home is to find someone who's much further down the road on that way back home than us, and to surrender to them and find out what that path is like, What are the signposts on the way? What turns do we make? What turns do we not make? And the knowledge that we are after is not a knowledge that can come from a book and we just put it into our gray matter and somehow that will do it. Each moment of our devotional service is a moment of surrendering to the Lord and offering ourselves to Him for that return. And because we can't see the Lord, we have to come through the devotees. So the main thing is to surrender to a teacher. Govinda, please.
On a similar point, I was thinking a nice barometer is, well, have you read the Bhagavad Gita? Have you read Srimad Bhagavatams? Have you read Chaitanya Charitamrita? You know, I feel like Prabhupada gave us those books as preliminary, at least, you know, before you can make a decision, of course, with guidance.
Yes. Yeah, so it's a matter of starting with the basics, and what's interesting is the basics are always important. Advaita.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so
Hare
much.
Krishna.
I was just thinking how interesting it is that, you know, why would that be so, that Krishna enjoys more ladies talk from the rooftops than hymns of the Vedas. And then I remember a very nice, it's a expression by one of the Sufi founders, forgot his name, that he said that the words that come out of heart will enter the heart. And the words that just come from the tongue will not pass the ears, will not pass further than just the ears. And, you know, there's so much to be said about authenticity and, you know, recognizing where we are at as we relate to Krishna. And because we can't really surrender unless we accept the fact that I'm here right now and I'm struggling with whatever the list is. You know, to become real and to recognize where we're at, it's essential in order to make a journey. You know, just like a Google map, point A to point B. Otherwise, you're faking it. You know, you're pretending. You mentioned Sahaja. You are embarking into something that you have no credit, no eligibility. So it's way more better to embrace our. There's a book called Perfect Imperfections, and it's all about, you know, just this anartanivritti, the journey, and seeing where we're at, because we can't really surrender unless that's in place. And from that point, everything we say will actually, it'll be very pleasing, not just to Krishna, to everybody, because we'll be authentic.
Authenticity, that's an excellent point. And what's interesting, if we'll walk in that sincerity and authenticity each step of the way, at a certain point down the road, we'll actually sincerely and authentically uncover that swarup, that original consciousness. And but you have to be where you are each step of the way. Thank you. So I think we have to end here. So Hare Krishna. Thank you for enduring, and pray for me that I can start feeling better. The weather's really affecting my health. So, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, all the assembled devotees ki jai.